Welcome back to Marie Lore. Apparently it's not common knowledge that I used to be a Christian. That's right, this atheist is an ex-Christian. I'm also an ex-Wiccan, an ex-pagan, and a couple other things. I'd like to start off by saying no shade to any religion I bring up. These are my own experiences, and if you had different ones, that's totally okay. These are just my own personal experiences. I started off as a Christian. I read the Bible front to back at least 8 times as a kid. I remember going to church every Sunday. I went to Awana. If you know what that is, you know what the fuck is up. But this is where we get into my own personal experiences. Because I was unmedicated at the time, and I used to have really severe hallucinations. So when people were talking about how they were connecting with God, I thought they meant literally. Like I was actually hearing God, and that's not normal. Also, whenever people talk about how they actually physically feel God on them, I did, and that is also not normal. 2 things happened that really cracked my faith, and the third fully destroyed it. The first one that cracked my faith was honestly just taking medication that actually worked for me, and then suddenly I wasn't having any religious experiences anymore. Pure silence. The second experience that cracked my relationship with God was actually a fight I had with a friend. She stole my bike, I was young, and instead of fighting with her like any other kid, I started screaming at the top of my lungs that she would go to hell. My mom stepped in, and that's also partially what broke her faith in God. Now, my mom's story is her own to tell, but for me personally, I realized, even as a kid, that my relationship with God was actually fracturing relationships with my family and my friends. I had a very toxic outlook, and because I had read the Bible front to back and literally memorized it in Awana, I was really critical of other people that weren't following the Word of God, so I was judging them, and that is literally going directly against the Bible. When I realized that, when I was a little bit older, I studied with my mom, and she actually learned some Hebrew to learn the original Bible, and what we've all discovered together as a family is that the translations are incredibly wrong, and a lot of it is just really up to interpretation. None of the translations make sense. The entire English Bible it doesn't make sense. For example, in the English translation of the Bible, there's a lot of mentions of hell, even though hell is not a real place in the original translation. The original translation of hell was actually a city outside of Bethlehem that was very run down. There were a lot of fires, there were a lot of homeless people. It was a very bad place. So if you didn't do good in the city, you would be cast out of the city into this hell. Hell is not a real afterlife place in the original Bible. It also really damaged my relationship with God and the church, because as I was hitting puberty, my male peers were treated a lot better and way differently than I was, even though just a few years ago, we were at the exact same level. So it really confused me why I was doing the exact same work in the exact same ways, and yet I was treated poorly compared to them. Long story short, we left the church and basically left all of Christianity, so I decided to look for my faith in other religions. I landed on Wicca and paganism. Interacting with Wiccan and pagan people was a very stark contrast to Christian people, because in my experience, Christianity and Christians were very judgmental, even though it went against the Bible. However, these people were not really judgmental at all. A lot of them were ex-Christians like me, and yet they were super accepting. I was a teenager, so I ended up getting into the magic and spells part of it, and I actually ended up dabbling in some dark magic. However, I was very spiritual at the time too, so I was worried about demons and any hauntings, so I ended up giving up and I didn't really connect with the religion personally. Even though I liked the people that I was hanging out with, it just didn't connect with me. So I moved on to Buddhism. Buddhism I never really connected with either. It kind of just seemed like a filler religion for me. Obviously it's different for other people, but for me personally, it just didn't fit. So I decided to be agnostic. I wasn't really connecting with anything, and because of that, I couldn't necessarily prove anything wrong. It just didn't connect with me. So instead of saying I was an atheist, I said I was agnostic. By now, we are 5 or 6 years in, and I have studied so many religions that it ended up turning into more of a fascination with religions and where they came from, rather than trying to find a place for my faith. However, through studying so many religions, I slowly turned from an agnostic to an atheist. Like I said, this is no shade to any religious people. I just started realizing through my studies how similar and how different religions were, and how little proof there was to back up literally any religion ever. Also, a lot of religions have a very hierarchy type of system, and I didn't like that. Out of all the religions I studied, two things became very apparent for almost all of them. Number one, from what I studied, I'm not necessarily talking about you, it's just what I studied. Religion is a filler for people. Religion is something that, say they're afraid of death. Well, they need religion to explain what happens afterwards so they're not so scared. People that are just coming off of drugs or alcohol and they need something to lean on, but they don't have a person, they decide to lean on God. And two, many of the religions I studied all have a very Christian outlook where if you die and you don't believe in your proper religion, you will not have the right outcome. So like in Christianity, if you don't believe in God, you're going to hell. Well, there are over 4,000 practiced religions, and what are the odds statistically that you're going to pick the right one? There's a very high possibility that you're going to go to this random religion's hell, which really just didn't sit right with me. All of these studies combined slowly turned me from an agnostic to an atheist. It was just a slow progression. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to you if you do your studies or don't do your studies. It's just what happened to me. I'm now very comfortable being an atheist. I'm not afraid of death. If I die tomorrow and there's nothing after life, then that's okay with me. And from a lot of people I talk to, especially Muslims and Christians, they can't comprehend that I'm okay with dying and there being absolutely nothing after death. I really am okay with that. It means that I'm living my life to the fullest right now. This was already a super long video, so I'm going to cut it here. Thank you guys for watching Marie Lore. Let me know if you want to hear anything else about my life.